This episode about Tigers is sponsored by the free-to-play game World of Tanks. Most of you might know that Tigers and Königstiger were organized in heavy tank battalions. Ideally, such a battalion contained 45 Tigers. Yet this number stood in stark contrast to the 879 men that such a battalion was composed of in total. Hence the question, why 879 men for 45 Tigers? That would mean 19.53 men per Tiger. Yet we know that the regular Tiger crew was 5 men. 5 times 45 is 225 men. So we have 654 men to account for. But let's take a look at the bigger picture first. Namely at the Schwere Panzerabteilung, the heavy tank battalion. It consists of battalion staff and headquarters company, 3 identical heavy tank companies, a panzer maintenance company, and a supply company. Only the headquarters company and the heavy tank companies were equipped with Tigers. The headquarters company had 3 Tigers, whereas each Schwere Panzer company had 14 Tigers, so 42 in total. Let us start with 879 men and walk through our heavy kitted battalion. The first major unit is the staff and headquarters company, both of which were merged in June 1944. First, the battalion staff in total had 70 men here, namely 6 officers, 3 NCOs and 8 enlisted men. In terms of equipment, it had 6 smaller vehicles, namely 2 small cars, 2 medium cars and 2 Kettengrads. If you want to learn more about the Kettengrad, be sure to check out this video. Next is the headquarters company. It consists of the leader section, an armored recon platoon, a scout and engineer platoon and an anti-aircraft platoon. The leader section had a total of 24 men. In terms of equipment, there were 3 Tigers, which were all equipped with additional radios. Furthermore, the unit had a light car, medium truck, a motorcycle and an armored Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251-8, which was the medical variant of the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251, which I covered in this video, which was also used heavily in the next subunit, namely the Gepanzerte Aufklärungszug or Armored Recon Battalion, with a total of 41 men. The unit was equipped with 7 half-tracks, 3 of them were regular Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251 and 4 Sonderkraft 251-5, which is described as an observation half-tracks in one source, but according to other source as an engineer half-track. Note, there were several variants of engineer half-tracks. Which brings us to the Erkunder und Pionierzug, scout and engineer platoon, which consists of 54 men. In terms of equipment, this one had a Schwimmwagen, literally a swimming car, 6 Kettengrads, 4 small cars, a motorcycle, 3 trucks and 3 Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251-7, which were the engineer half-tracks equipped with bridge sections. The last subunit is the Fliegerabwehrzug, and this is a good point to remind you that this was the authorized organization. So in reality this could differ, and especially for the anti-aircraft unit, there were various different kinds of anti-aircraft vehicles used throughout the units. This unit had a total of 40 men. In terms of equipment, there were 8 vehicles, 1 light car, 1 motorcycle, 3 anti-aircraft vehicles and 3 half-tracks for carrying ammunition. So in total for the battalion staff and headquarters company we have 176 men and 3 Tigers. So next, let us look at the 3 Panzer companies. Each consists of a leader section with 2 Tigers, 2 small cars and 2 Kettengrads, with a total of 18 men in terms of personnel. Furthermore, each company had 3 platoons. Each consists of 4 Tigers, with a total of 20 men. Hence 20 men times 3, that means a total of 60 men. Yet there was more. There were also replacement crews, in total 10 men. Now if we add the replacement crews with 3 tank platoons and leader section, we have a total of 88 men with 14 Tigers. And since we have 3 companies, we get a total of 264 men and 32 Tigers. So not that complicated after all. Hence, currently we have 45 Tigers and 440 men that are accounted for, but we are still missing another 439 men. Which is actually quite interesting, since this is about half the number of men which were used in combat, command and staff duties, whereas the other 439 were serving in maintenance and logistics. So let us take a closer look here. First, the Panzerwerkstatt company, literally tank workshop company, yet tank maintenance company is more suited here. Surprise, this company, like the other units before, had a leader section, which in this case consists of 10 men. The first and second repair platoons had 51 men each. Most of them mechanics, like tank engine mechanics, car mechanics, transmission mechanics, welders, electricians, smiths, yet also a plumber and a painter. In terms of equipment, each platoon had 4 motor vehicles for repairs, 8 trucks for spare parts and other materials, 1 heavy half-track 18-ton with a crane that had a pulling capacity of 6 tons, a truck with a crane that had a pulling capacity of 3 tons, 1 bus for transporting the personnel, and 1 truck for baggage. The 3rd platoon was the recovery platoon. It had a total of 32 men. Most of the men here were drivers. In terms of equipment, it had 2 small cars, 3 Panther. Like the repair platoons, it also had 1 heavy half-truck 18-ton with a crane that had a pulling capacity of 6 tons, 1 truck with a crane that had a pulling capacity of 3 tons. Additionally, it had 6 heavy half-tracks 18-ton. The next element was the Waffen-SS, the armory. It had 11 men. Most of them were armorers and drivers, yet there were also 2 electricians. Keep in mind that the Tiger's gun was electrically fired. Yet probably more important was the work on the turret, as pointed out by Willey, citing an army regulation. The repair of weapons and weapon mounts, including gun sights, is done by the Waffen-SS. Who works on the electric turret installations, the Waffenmeister personnel are assisted by the electrician. In terms of equipment, there was 1 car and 2 trucks. Next is the workshop for signals equipment. It consists of 8 men. In terms of equipment, 3 trucks and a trailer for charging batteries. And the final element of the Panzerwerkstatt is the Tross, the train or better supply train for less ambiguity. A total of 23 men, most of them were drivers, but there were also radio men, clerks, cooks, 1 tailor and 1 shoemaker. The supply train also had a subunit, namely the Fliegerabwehrtrupp, meaning anti-aircraft section. It consists of 3 men with a car equipped with a twin machine gun. Now those guys must have been some really good shots. Anyway, now we have 250 men left. Time to look at the Versorgungskompanie, the logistics or supply company. As usual, it had a leader section with a total of 25 men, 3 small cars, 3 trucks and 2 motorcycles. Next is the medical detachment, and these guys must have been really efficient because we have a total of 8 men here. They were equipped with 1 car and 2 trucks. Next is the maintenance detachment with a total of 136 men. There was a lot of equipment here. 14 trucks and an additional truck with crane, 7 small half-tracks and a large half-track with a crane, 9 cars and 2 Panther. Note, this unit contained various subunits like 3 repair sections, a recovery section, a spare part section and a section for weapons and signals equipment maintenance. And I think that the repair sections and the recovery section need a bit of explaining, since similar units were also present in the Panzerwerkstatt company. So what is the difference between the repair section here and those of the maintenance company? Schneider notes, the main task of the maintenance sections of the repair section were to perform routine maintenance tasks, together with the tank crews, and to repair minor damage. Heavily damaged vehicles were generally handed over to the tank maintenance company. Next is the difference between the recovery section here and the recovery platoon in the maintenance company. A recovery section, which due to the lack of heavy recovery equipment only functioned as a towing section or was assigned in its entirety to the recovery platoon of the tank maintenance company. Be aware here that although the recovery section according to the table of equipment and organization was authorized to Panther, these were not necessarily delivered. Hence the statement by Schneider that the section lacked heavy recovery equipment. The next unit of the supply company was the fuel detachment, with a total of 23 men and 19 4.5 ton trucks for fuel. Because remember, our 45 kiddies are quite thirsty and milk does not always cut it in this case. And speaking of thirsty, our cats were also hungry. Hence we look at the ammunition detachment, with a total of 19 men and 15 4.5 ton trucks. And finally, the administration detachment, with a total of 39 men. It contained various subunits that dealt with the general administration, provisions, the field kitchen and clothing as well. As such, it included clerks, accountants, cooks, drivers, shoemakers and tailors. In terms of equipment, there was 1 car and a total of 13 trucks, of which 5 were equipped with ovens. So now every one of the 879 men and 45 Tigers is accounted for. So let us take a short look at the bigger picture again. 3 Tigers and 176 men are used in the battalion staff and headquarters company. 42 Tigers and 264 men were in the 3 Panzer companies. 189 men worked in the tank maintenance company, and finally 250 men in the supply company. This also shows that about half of the men were used in command and combat roles, whereas the other half served in maintenance and logistics. Now, before we talk about the limitations of this approach and limits when it comes to data, a word from our sponsor of this episode, the free-to-play game World of Tanks, which made this video possible in the first place. Now, if you want to get started with World of Tanks, they provide a special invite link for new players that is linked at the top of the description. This link gives you immediate access to a Tier 5 Premium Matilda Black Prince, 7 days of premium time, 1 garage slot, and a 100% trained crew. You might ask, what about the Tiger? Well, you also get 2 rental tanks for 10 battles each, namely the famous Tiger 131 of the Tank Museum at Bovington, which once roamed the North African desert. And since you also might want to go tiger hunting, the second rental tank is the British Sherman Firefly. So if you want to ambush one or more of the million players worldwide, head on in. Of course, you can also charge in and deal it out up close and personal, since World of Tanks allows for many different playstyles. Yet we are not done yet. This year there's a virtual Tank Fest, which means there's an online stream as well. It is also linked in the description. Finally, we also need to talk about precision and limitations of this approach. First, be aware there were several tables of equipment and organization for the heavy tank battalions throughout the war. In this video we looked at the June-July 1944 organizations of the various subunits. During writing the scripts I encountered some problems. Particularly I found numbers that noted more men for the whole battalion than I got by adding up the subunits. For instance, only the November 1944 organization should have 878 men, which is 1 man less than my calculations for July-June 1944. Generally, the total number of authorized men went down over the course of the war, with the highest number in 1933. Yet I also encountered an organizational overview from 1945 in the German archives that noted a total strength of 1037 men, which is about the 1943 number of another source, something I had found no explanation so far. Second, I encountered some errors in the source material. In one case I could not determine what was the correct number, namely the totals of the subunits given by the source or my totals of the subunits. So if I chose the wrong number, it would be 855 men, not 879 men. Although the difference of 24 men macht das Kraut auch nicht fett. Third, these are authorized numbers. Usually units operated with far lower numbers of men and equipment or got different equipment issued. Fourth, due to the wide range of vehicles covered, I sometimes did not specify the exact truck or vehicle type. For instance, for trucks there were 2 ton, 3 ton, 4.5 ton, open trucks, etc. I originally intended to add them as symbols, but I did not find a proper solution that would work out in terms of space and was also efficient enough. Fifth, be aware that some of the Tigers were reserve vehicles, but we also have replacement crews, so there will never be a perfect match, which is important to keep in mind. To summarize, although it seems like a huge amount of men for such a rather low number of tanks, at a closer look we see that half of these men served in command or combat roles. Yet this is not the only 50-50 split here, since we have 45 tanks with a 5-man crew, so we have 225 men, and since 225 men of 440 are 51%, so again we have a 50-50 split, or about 26% of the whole battalion were actually vehicle crews. As such, a closer look reveals that the number of men is actually quite reasonable, unless you don't believe in logistics, and then you might be on the wrong channel anyway. Big thank you here to World of Tanks for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to check out the link in the description. Big thank you here to Leo Niehorster for providing me with advice on the data on this topic, although be aware that the data used was mainly from another source. Special thanks to Joshua from World War II Armour for helping me out with naming of US units of the period for reference. As always, source the list in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.